Welcome to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bits in between.
Welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Today we're talking about the use of artificial intelligence in hospitals and the cutting-edge research that is looking into it. But before we get to that, there's new Human Factors podcasts out on the circuit that I know that we should be saying there, don't listen to any other podcast but this one. But as we all know, that's not the case. So really, we are very encouraging of anybody who wants to set up a podcast to promote the world of human factors. And whether you want to take part in podcasts that are here already, or you want to set up your own, then if you're looking for any sort of advice or anything, we are a friendly bunch. We do have a loose, I would say, social network. It's not really a social network because half of it's spread around the world. So just meeting up for a beer is difficult. But we're all very encouraging with advice. So for those of you that are not aware, Human Factors Minute, produced by the Human Factors cast team, is now publicly available. And so that is 1 minute bite-sized chunks of human factors goodness, bits of knowledge focused around a very specific subject. And some of them are even only a minute long. Most of them actually do go on for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. But that doesn't get away from the fact we call it Human Factors Minute. So that is now available on all good podcast directories, and even some less good ones. New to the streets, Fran Ives has launched All Systems Ergo, a podcast looking at the medical domain, which is brilliantly produced and well worth a listen. And the fact she's come up with a really cool name as well. That is well done. We'll be reposting her episodes on our social media, so do have a listen wherever you find them. And the new one that we're producing, so The Pulse, the new CIEHF fortnightly look. It's kind of a look behind the scenes. It's how does the magic happen? Because there's so much that CIEHF does that we as members kind of take for granted, that you just know the conference is going to run and there's loads of, it's all there for you. You know the format's going to be, but so much work goes on in the background, weeks and months before even the first person crosses the door of the conference center. So as well as all the other events that go on, so webinars and even just like what do the staff do behind the scenes. So this is a kind of a look behind the scenes at what goes on to hopefully help members understand what it's about. So back to today's episode. Artificial intelligence is all the rage at the moment. ChatGPT and other AI tools are really hogging the limelight. Those kind of inspired the public consciousness. And some love it, some hate it, some are terrified, and some can't wait to embrace it. And so today I'm actually really pleased to welcome Kate Preston. Kate is not only studying about the use of AI in the health domain. This is what she's going to talk to us about today, but she's also co-chair of the CIEHF Special Interest Group looking at AI in digital health. So, Kate, welcome, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thanks for letting me come
on. I say welcome to the podcast. You're no stranger to it. You were actually on last year because we talked about what goes on at the CIEHF behind the scenes. You were part of the conference committee. What were you guys called?
We're secretariat.
Secretariat. I knew there's a big posh word around that. Yes. It's Friday and I don't do well with big words. So you were part of the secretariat last year and you were part of the secretariat this year in those beautiful mustard yellow coloured tops.
I was, yes. Lovely colour.
Did you enjoy it this year? Was it as good as last year? What was your thoughts?
I actually thought it was better this last year because it was bigger for one, and I really liked the venue as well, and just the amount of interesting topics. I mean, I was just in the healthcare room, I will say, so I didn't get to go and see what everybody else was up to, but just seeing how that's come on since last year was so interesting, so positive, I think.
Yeah. There did seem to be a real buzz around it, and that was a big takeaway for me. That there was just so many people there, and just everyone just seemed to be really happy just to be together. I know we did the live version last year, but this just seemed to have. It was almost we were out of the shadow of COVID and lockdowns and stuff, and people felt almost carefree in their approach. But I noticed you were also quite keen to be up on the stage for the karaoke as well. That seemed to be fun.
Yeah, got dragged into doing 500 miles and someone came over and was like, oh yeah, you're Scottish, aren't you? You can do this. I was like, okay. So I dragged Amy up with me as well, and we had a great time.
There's nothing like stereotyping people. That's for the sake of public humiliation.
Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. So obviously we're chatting like old friends because I've known you for a while, but some other people who are listening may not know who or what you are doing. So tell us a bit more about what you are doing and what you get up to on your day-to-day basis.
So I am a third year or final year PhD student. That's terrifying to me because I don't know where the time has gone. And I also, as you said, co-chair the special interest group for AI and digital health. And on a day-to-day basis, I do quite a lot of things. I can't focus on one task for very long, so I try to keep myself as busy as possible. So I'm either, organising a doodle poll for the special interest group, or I do a bit of teaching occasionally. For the psychology undergrads, not so much lately because I'm so busy. I'm trying to set up kind of, along with Amy and another lecturer in psychology, a kind of undergrad course on human factors for the fourth years, because we realised that we actually didn't get taught about human factors at all in our undergrad. But mostly, I just focus on my PhD, so that's a lot of writing at the moment. I'm trying to write my kind of introduction chapters and also do the write-up for my analysis. So on my kind of my first field one, my second results chapter, trying to write that up as well. I sit in front of a computer a lot, which is good, but also can be tough.
I hope you're taking the appropriate breaks and doing all of the good things that we lecture everybody else about.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes because you know all the stuff, you know what you should be doing, you should go outside, you should take, what is it, 20, be 20 feet away, then for 20 minutes or something like that, and you know this, but you never do it. It's so hard, especially when you're at home.
Yes. It's we're very good at lecturing. Do as I say, not as I do, as I find appropriate.
Exactly.
So you've got into into this degree, and you are a really awesome person who talks about human factors a lot and sharing the knowledge, which is fantastic. But how did you find out about human factors in the first place? Why did you get involved in it? Because most people have never heard of it until like sort of second, maybe even third careers. How have you managed to get to it so early?
By accident, and I feel like I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and I feel everybody says that, but it was completely by accident. I it started probably, nice progression is when I was like 10 or 11, my dad was like, you'd be great in psychology, you like people, you understand people, and I'm like, do I? But yeah, he said you would be great at psychology, so that was the kind of mindset I had throughout high school. That was in primary school when he said that. Well, throughout high school, and then I went to do psychology as an undergrad. And then I kind of set my sights on clinical psychology. I thought I would work for the NHS, be a clinical psychologist. So I went on to do a master's in clinical health psychology. And I mean, that dream kind of ended when I realised I liked kind of research and this side of things. And when I was doing my master's, there was an opportunity to be an ad hoc research assistant up in the pharmacy and biomedical science department. And this was kind of focusing not on biomedical science, because I had nothing to do with that, but kind of health service research around pharmacy. And I don't know, actually remember why I applied, like what the thought process was, but I realised how much I loved research during my undergrad and my fourth year. I had a fantastic supervisor, and now someone I consider a really good friend, Alan, and he really got me into research, I think. So I saw this advert and I was like, oh, apply. And I have a really strong memory of sitting in Brewdog, where we used to live above a Brewdog, writing, it's great, miss that, writing up my CV in a cover letter and sending it away. And I had no idea at that time that that would literally change the complete direction of my career. Like that one moment in Brewdog with a pint was like the change. So I sent that off and I got it, and I was in as an ad hoc research assistant for 4 months while I finished off my master's, and then they took me on full time for, I think it was a year in the end. I was there for a full time for a year. And at the same time, they kind of offered me, they're great people in my department. They gave me so many opportunities when I was a research assistant. I think I have one first author paper from it and like 3 second author or something. So it wasn't just I was doing kind of the grunt work. I was really involved in the team, and it was fantastic. And then I did a little bit of human factors work during that kind of research assistant. We did a study on some human factors approaches for barcode scanning technology in community pharmacy. At the time, though, I was like, all right, okay, I don't really know what this is. Doing human factors, okay, fine, whatever. And then they were like, here's an opportunity for a PhD, why don't you apply? And it was in AI technology from a human factors perspective. I was part of it would be part of a doctoral school that focused on AI in healthcare. So I applied and I got it after a grueling interview process. And that's where it kind of started, that it wasn't, I mean, it took me maybe a year and a half to actually understand what human factors was, like in the sense that I could actually reel off about it to people. But that's kind of how I got started. It was completely by accident, and I credit Brewdog for a lot of it.
Human Factors, sponsored by Brewdog.
Exactly.
I presume that Brewdog's been powering your way through what you're doing now. Have you had to find other sponsor beers?
Yes, well, I wish. Don't live there now. I'm in the middle of nowhere now, so I can't just go into my local Brewdog.
Fair enough. So you're in your final year, you say? And so how have you found that whole study experience? Is it because some people, if they dive into a topic, they then get sick of it really, really quickly? Or have you been able to dive into it and thoroughly enjoy what you're doing? Or is it a bit of both?
I love my topic. I think it's fantastic. I think human factors is kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's just so interesting. And I talk about it so much. Like, and my partner, he's trained to be a pilot. And I saw, I was like, you have a section on human performance. And I was just like, oh my God. So I talked to him about it for a long time. I just love the topic. I think AI is so interesting as well. I think there's a lot of potential to use that in healthcare, whether we're there just yet, but we'll get into that in a bit. But I love my topic so much. I think being a PhD student is hard because it is a lot of waiting, and I'm quite a proactive person. I like to get things done, and I think the process of doing a PhD is more difficult than me loving my topic, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But there's almost that hoop jumping that you need to do in order to get to the good stuff. No,
yeah, I do take a lot of comfort knowing I have Amy with me. Me and her, well, you'll see it if anybody saw us at the conference. Like, we're connected to the hip, like she is the best person to have with me during all this.
A good partnership.
Yes.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and actually get stuck into your PhD and find out what it is that you do actually know. So we'll be back right after this.
You are listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
And welcome back. And today we're talking with Kate Preston about her PhD in AI in health. So I talk about your PhD being about AI in health, but it's a bit more specific than that. So, or at least I assume it is. Otherwise, you're taking on a massive challenge. So, what's your PhD on in particular?
So, it was when I started. It was broadly AI in healthcare. From a human factors perspective, I was that person. I was the human factors person as part of my doctoral school. So I kind of went into it with like okay. But at the time I didn't know how wide human factors was. So I was like, I could just do a massive study. But no, I got more specific. So I did a lot of looking around and research and kind of where my department sits as well. And it's mostly from a big data AI side in hospitals. So I was like, right, literature says mostly done in hospitals. This makes sense. I'll focus on hospitals. And then within hospitals, it seems like AI focuses on kind of clinical decision support, helping make clinical decisions. So I was like, right, okay, let's do that. So I started by broadly, and I mean it was broad, doing a scoping review. And it wasn't a systematic review because it was so broad. And you actually impossible to do any sort of systematic review on this because the data the research was so broad and so different as well. So I started doing a scoping review that basically wanted to find out what human factors approaches had been applied to artificial intelligence clinical decision support in hospitals. Huge. I got about 9,000 hits.
Wow.
It was that was title and abstracts that I had to screen was around 9,000. And luckily I had Amy doing all my validation, so I could kind of be like, I'm sorry it's huge, but I'm doing it for you back, so it's fine. So then I managed to kind of whittle, but managed sounds like it was easy. I got from 9,000 to 36 studies.
Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah.
that's impressive filtering.
Oh, it was a tough process. I think a lot were on Alzheimer's. I don't know how that got picked up, if I'm honest. I had like 10 pages of search terms and still it came up with Alzheimer's, so I don't really know. So 36 studies, and then I kind of grouped the approaches into what I call the AI life cycle, which is kind of design, implementation, and use. And then that was a nice structure that I could base the rest of my PhD on. So that was like my first section. And then I saw that from the very beginning, there's this thing that I term pre-development analysis. So this is in design and things that you should do right off the bat. You should. It's like requirements. You have to do it for an AI to actually be used correctly. I think. So I thought, right, I'm going to sit myself in pre-development analysis. I'm going to start from the beginning of these kind of approaches that I found, and I then part of my doctoral school there was a PhD student, Callum, who was developing an AI for sepsis fluid management. And I somehow managed to convince him to collab with me.
Oh.
And I nicked his concept. So he hasn't actually finished developing the AI, but I nicked the concept that he'd come up with. And I was like, look, do you mind if I go into critical care and ask people what they would want to be able to use this AI? And he was like, sure. So I took that, I made a vignette so people weren't just like considering, you hear an AI for sepsis fluid management and people are like, I don't know what that means. So I made a vignette and it was like, it's on volume. Like, think about this. And then I interviewed them and I said, what would you need? Based on Pascal has come out with a nice extended model that puts AI technology into the work system. So I used that. And I interviewed them and said, what do you use now? Like, what's your current work system? And what would need to change as part of that work system to be able to use the AI? And that's come up with some really interesting data. But that's kind of where I've put myself in, not the full design, but this like really specific bit that's like pre-development is so important because people who develop AI often don't really know about the users of it.
Yeah.
So that's where I sit currently with that.
Cool. So we talked about the use of AI in hospitals then. And I think you started to raise some of them concerns about, yes, we're at that phase, and I'm as guilty as the next person. I'm playing around with like ChatGPT and other tools are available, and just going like, what can you use this for? And almost geeking out on, yes, I could do this, I could do. Oh, I don't want to do that. That's bad. Let's put that away and not repeat that. But where do you see you've highlighted a specific role, but where do you see AI having a role in hospitals? Where do you see them being useful without worrying about? I mean, let's do the whole thing. Let's not worry about the ethics of it. Let's not worry about the money required to make this work. But where do you see them actually adding value?
Oh, there's so much value that could be added. And I'm not talking about like getting rid of clinicians and stuff. Like, you do need them in healthcare. You need the people there. But just to remove that burden that they have at the moment, you see it, they're overworked, they're struggling, and just AI has so much potential to help them with clinical decisions. You see some real pockets of fantastic work. It's like the Mia AI that's able to be a second screener for breast cancer. Like, actually, that's managed to make its way up to Scotland. It's
Not all the way up there. Wow.
yeah, it's up in Aberdeen as well. Like, I'm like, wow, how has that managed to get all the way up to Scotland? But, it's so fantastic, and like it shows that you can use an AI as a second screener, and that cuts out this need for another person without removing the person, if you get what I mean. Like, it helps reduce workload. And I also see a lot of it it's used in admin tasks as well, processing people's records, making it easy for someone to follow. There's so much potential. It's kind of scary, but at the same time, you're like, can we do it? But there's a lot of stuff that has to be done first before AI can be used. There's a big caveat. Like, this is all me saying it would be fantastic, but it might not work yet.
So yeah, okay. So I blithely said, let's not worry about the ethics and all that sort of stuff. But you do mention that there is that caveat. So let's get the elephant in the room out the way. What do you think? What should we be concerned about at the moment? AI still fairly young in some respects, but then we've got other people like Paul Salmon talking about artificial general intelligence, and then you go and watch any of the Terminator films and you think, wow, okay, is that where we're going? Everyone's very quick to say it's all going to end in the demise of the human race. Is that a concern? Do you think we should be there, or is there smaller concerns that we think we should be worried about first?
I think that is a big concern. That's one of my main. I have like a top 3 concerns that I talk about, and misconception is a big one. That people will think of AI and they'll think, oh my God, that's going to take my job. Like, or that's not good. Like, how do you know if it's correct? And I think understanding that any AI that gets put into healthcare specifically, and this might not be in other industries, but in healthcare specifically, will never remove the other person. Like, clinicians are not going to lose their jobs because of AI. I just think it's going to be able to support them in their job role, making, things easier for them. But that is a huge misconception that people do think right now that it is artificial general intelligence. Or I've seen another one, which is like AI it's almost like you see in the films. I can't remember what it's called, but like supreme AI or something like that. It's like the next level after general intelligence. And people think of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big one.
It kind of is, isn't it? Because it almost always takes away from the conversation, because I think what you highlighted earlier is absolutely right. When you're looking at, the second opinion, the things where you take away, almost them human elements of being tired, of working a 12-hour shift and still having to be constantly on the ball. It's almost that bit of reassurance. But the other one that you made, I really want to highlight, because I think it's really important. It actually came out in a Twitter conversation the other day about where AI and digital, because I think combining them together is really helpful. Giving simple automation tools to make people's lives easier. So I guess an example that came up was when you have to order a test for somebody, then they were having to set themselves a little calendar task or a little email task to say, remember to go and look at the test results, or to go and follow them up. And it's like, well, why doesn't the system do that automatically? You're like, well, paper can't do that. Or what do you mean you're still ordering it by paper? That's insane. So you can sort of see a lot of this stuff. How do you think? How is it that so many organizations in the health domain don't share this information? Because I as you know, I don't work in health at all, and I get surprised and possibly slight. I should be more cynical perhaps, but I get more surprised at just how joined up it's not. And so, how is there a risk here that one area, Aberdeen, gets the best AI in the world, yet the rest of the UK can't see it because it's all been done up there? Is that a real problem, or is that just a external insight I'm misreading?
That's a huge problem. I got doing the interviews. I was like, so your physical environment or your tools and technologies, well, how are they now? Would they need to change? And they're like, yeah, we're a paper-based ICU. And I'm like, you're all what? The infrastructure across the UK is not prepared for this. They don't talk to each other. Scotland's health boards don't talk to each other.
Wow.
Scotland is a tiny country and they don't talk to each other. They have different systems. They have, specifically in critical care, they have different clinical systems for, putting patient notes. So if you have a patient who moves from one health board to another, and even between hospitals within health boards, they might use a different system. So then you have to find that or ask the health board and you print it out and then type it up into your system. So I know I hadn't realized or grasped how much infrastructure will need to change for AI to be used in healthcare. You can't pull patients' data very easily from other areas within the same hospital. So you'll have an electronic ICU, for example, but you will have a ward that is paper, or more specifically, emergency department where a lot of people who go into critical care will start off at.
Yeah.
That's paper. They'll move into a critical care unit or, ICU, HDU, and it's on electronic. So then the doctors or nurses or other clinicians will have to upload the paper. And it's just
Wow.
within one hospital, you can have different systems, and then it won't talk to each other, and then you never hear about the amazingness that's going on in Aberdeen. And yeah, no, I could talk about that for hours. I find that really difficult.
So, and I guess this is a curveball question, which you possibly can't answer. If you want to plead the fifth, that's absolutely fine. You're spending time and effort researching AI and all that sort of stuff. If we're not getting the basics right, kind of what's the point?
I know.
But and that's me being derogatory about your work without meaning to be derogatory about the work. But so if you're, I guess I'm trying to get to your motivation here, because if you've got the motivation to do this really cool stuff that can like really, really help people, but the basics aren't there to exploit what you're doing properly, how does that not get you down?
Oh, it does.
Okay, fair enough.
It really does. But it's an interesting output from my research. I think that's what I try and think is I'm not trying to do this practically. This
Right,
is
yes.
So if I can find something that shows what needs to change before AI comes in, that's absolutely fine. I'm okay with that. I've made my peace with that. The fact that I'm doing my PhD or beyond, probably not going to be able to actually implement this unless something dramatically changes. But if I can tell people, and you see a lot of people talking about AI within the healthcare domain, and they're like, it'd be fantastic. And I'm like, no, you can't. Not until you sort this infrastructure, please. At least I can have that. And I can also show the benefits of applying human factors approach, because you actually do find out these things. And
Yes.
I think that's a problem we have in the AI world, is that those developing it don't know.
Yeah.
So my colleague who is creating this AI, I saw the benefits, and he still speaks about the benefits when I took him to an ICU. I took him into our local kind of critical care unit, and he still talks about that. He says it was really, I keep thinking about them and the importance of what we're doing. And I'm like, okay, good, but you didn't have that before.
Yeah.
So it shows how important human factors is in this. And if I can come out of this PhD saying, right, within Scotland and probably across the UK, but I'm only focusing on Scotland, you need to change infrastructure if you're ever going to use AI. You need to change the misconceptions and whatever else comes out of this research that I'm analysing right now. And also, so that's one side. You need to change that before AI can be used. And also, people who are creating this AI, please don't just create it. Do apply human factors first. Because without it, I mean, you're going to make all these interesting models and then get to this point where you're going to implement it and it's not going to work and no one's ever going to use it.
That sounds like a bit of a mic drop moment, and we should just stop it there.
I know.
But, no, but I mean, that is fantastic. The way you've almost organically come across, you've seen human factors as a good handrail for developing that. That is really cool. And actually, that whole insight about infrastructure is not somewhere where I expected that this conversation was going to go, but just seems so critical and fundamental that we need to be doing a lot more shouting and screaming about that. So what you're in your final year. What are the next stages for your study? How long? What are the steps you need to go through now before we can actually pick up your weighty tome of written amazingness and throw it at people and say take note?
Oh gosh, I've got about 9 months left of funding to go, and I need to do one more field work. So I think one of my parts from this interview process is I asked people what their tasks were.
Right.
That would need to change, and I really want to go and validate that. So go and do some observations actually directly in a critical care unit. And now I'm not talking about watching someone actually work with someone with sepsis, because you can't guarantee that. Like you can't.
That does raise a slight ethical thing. I know you're going to get sepsis. You don't induce that sort of stuff. That's crazy.
There's definitely ethical issues about, because Strathclyde, where I am, is like right next to a hospital with a critical care unit, and there's something wrong with the ethics of someone calling me up being like, they're here, you know. So I think it's going to be a hypothetical. So I will go in and be in their environment and maybe be like, could you walk me through the task? You know, actually pretend that there is a bed in front of you, even, you know, go and get a bed, and walk me through it so that I can validate these tasks, and then also ask them about any maybe safety issues that might come up, or, you know, where would you think that you'd have time to go and look on a system to, you know, either input or automatically get an output from an AI. So I need to do that, but I think I will wait until after the summer just and get that done, because it won't be too much work.
That's a bold statement.
No, it will be a lot of work, but I'm trying right now to get my introduction chapters written so that I can just focus on that last situation. So hopefully March 2024 will be when people can. I know. It's been a long. So I was funded for 3.5 years, so it's a bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. I write stuff, and I'm trying really hard to just keep writing. I think that's the main thing that people trip up on, is they don't write until the very end, and then you kind of get stuck because there's only so much writing I can do in a day.
Well, I was going to say, because isn't it something like 80,000 words?
Yeah,
is the rough target.
100,000.
Right.
Yeah.
That must seem like just a massive thing.
When I started it, I was like, I'm never going to be able to write that many words. And now I'm like, how am I going to keep under that many words?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. But again, I guess if you've got into it and you're enthusiastic about what you're writing about, then that must make a huge difference.
It is, and it's right now it's the results section. So there's obviously 6 parts, because there's 6 areas of the work system that I'm looking at. And I'm like, okay, each section could be 5 pages easily. And that would be like me really cutting down.
Right.
That is huge.
Yes. It does feel, I mean, I guess with any sort of report you're writing, you're just like, right, because we do a lot of work with the military, and they like things to be really brief, succinct, and to the point. You're like, but hold on, I've just been doing a 2-year study, and you want me to condense that into 2 pages? What? But it's a skill to get the message out there. So I have a lot of sympathy with you.
It's going to be difficult, but it will get done. I think my dad would kill me if I did.
Right. We're going to take another quick break, and then we'll get to the final 3 questions.
Excellent.
Just before Barry gets to the final 3, my name's Nick Rome. Let me tell you about this. Technology in our world is evolving at a phenomenal pace, and keeping up with what that means in the human factors world can be challenging. That's where Human Factors Cast comes in. Human Factors Cast is a weekly podcast that highlights and breaks down stories that are chosen by you, the Human Factors community.
New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly.
Buttons in cars are safer and quicker to use than touchscreens.
A prototype just achieved a major milestone that actually fits the description of a flying car.
The show provides perspective based on experiences from different domains and different industries. We even cover some of the hottest conferences in the field. On this episode, we're recapping CIEHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference, Neuroergonomics Conference, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, UXPA International. Join me, Nick Rome.
And me, Barry Kirby.
Every Friday morning when Human Factors Cast drops on YouTube and your favorite podcast directory. And remember,
it depends.
And now I'm going to send it back over to Barry for the final 3.
That still makes me laugh. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you'll see that I've been playing with the effects of that somewhat, and Nick hasn't seen it yet, so I'll be quite keen to see what he thinks. So I've been talking with Kate Preston here around her PhD, and so we're now at the final 3. So, Kate, What are your, if you've got a, do you have a book or a paper or anything like that that you basically use repeatedly? You know, if it's not, if you've had enough of technical papers, then it could be a fictional book or anything like that. But do you have something that you keep on going back to?
Yeah. So when I saw that question, the first thing I thought of was my colleague Natalie's thesis. And I will tell her, me and Amy call it the Bible.
Right.
And she knows this. We use it constantly. It's a really useful. It's not human factors, but it has some elements that you can. It's qualitative, basically. That is one of them, and the other, and this is like a shameless plug, is the AI in healthcare white paper created by the special interest group before I started. But that I use a lot if I'm thinking big picture. I go back to that, and I'm like, right, stop thinking about the nitty gritty and start thinking about the big picture again here. I love that white paper. I have it like in my desk, and it's fantastic. I think those are probably the two that I use the most, and then also just whatever fictional book I'm reading at the moment, because you have to get away.
Yes. Are you a big reader? Do you like reading, or is it just a break type thing?
No, I love reading. Me and partner have a book club.
Oh, cool.
I don't know how he managed to get on my Amazon account, but somehow it's my Amazon account, and we share. And I pay for all his books, so I just read whatever, and often it's kind of sci-fi book he's reading at the moment. So yes, I read quite a lot.
Cool. So this is all. Obviously, we ask these questions for everybody. Given that you're like barely out of school yourself, and this is, but if you could go back to a younger Kate and give yourself some advice, what would it be?
Oh, stop worrying about it. Like, stop worrying about your future. And I mean, I still do that. I still worry about my future like daily.
Yeah.
I worry about how I'm going to get on the property ladder, but that's a whole other conversation. I think for high school Kate, I would be like, stop worrying about it. And then even undergrad Kate was always got an eye on what I'm going to do after, and how am I going to become a clinical psychologist is what I thought all the time.
Yeah.
And I think I spent so much time worrying about the future that I kind of stopped enjoying it, like the actual current time. So basically, yeah, just stop worrying about what's going to happen. Everything happens, and it just wasn't, something happens, and then you realize that you didn't actually want to do what you did wanted in undergrad, and then, yeah, everything happens, and it's all good.
That's a brilliant piece of advice, because I think it's the if you sort of I know everybody does the whole where you're going to be in 5 years time, which is a good thing to do. I think it's good to actually think about that, but don't be restricted by that, is because otherwise God knows what I'd be doing now. So now fast forward to the end of your career. You've had a fantastic career in whatever it is you've ended up doing, no doubt changed direction a few times and all that sort of stuff. What would you like to be remembered for?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think it sounds really cliche to be like, I made a difference, but if I had the opportunity to go and talk about human factors and make it more well known, it kind of like, Sarah Sharple at the conference is like, I am a chief scientific officer. I'm like, oh my God.
Yes.
Like, if you have the opportunity to go and do that, like, yeah, I would do that. I would love to do something like that. But even small fry, your day-to-day basis, I would really just love to look at something that's in the world, be it, a medical device, a medical process, an airplane, something, and be like, yeah, I contributed to that, and I made sure that was designed for the people, because that's how I tell people about human factors. I'm like, I'm designing specifically technology for people, and I just really would love to see something out there that I helped make for the people. And I think that's really it. If that's all I get out of my career, then that's absolutely fine. I'm more than happy with just that.
And I've got no doubt that you'll absolutely get there. So, Kate, if people want to get in touch with you, either to offer you that dream career, maybe the next chief scientific officer is open and waiting, how would they get in touch with you?
Twitter's probably the best. So that's at Kate Preston 96, I think. So that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. But LinkedIn as well, I do check on that, but I get notifications for Twitter. So that's probably the best way.
That's brilliant. Kate, thank you ever so much for sharing that that time and that insight, because I think we talked to a lot of people throughout the careers, but talking to people who are doing, the PhD type route, you're the first person we've spoken to actually within that and given some insights into that. So thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you all for listening and watching. Do comment and share and like and tell your friends and all that good stuff. And we shall see you all on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.